Hey, this was pretty requested. I didn't plan to do a breakdown or anything of these things before I felt like I had it down more, but it's also something that I kind of enjoy doing because it's fun to explain how I'm reasoning around stuff. So, first off, I mean, long time no see. I guess this is by no means a guarantee that I'll be resuming my previous release schedule or anything. Not that I had one, but you know, the frequency. I don't have as much time to put down towards the game as I used to, and whatever time I do have, I try to spend it just having fun on my own. I'm just gonna go through the stuff that I'm using because a lot of this is new to me as well, and yeah, I may have some of these things wrong. I don't really know. This is just impressions that I've brought with me from using this stuff over the last couple of days. I've only been using the Bow of the Last Guardian for like 3 days now because my friend basically forced me to buy one. I'm looking at, or I was looking at, other people doing a similar method. They were using a different pocket slot and they were using a slightly different rotation that was relying more around revolving abilities properly, which I'm not really confident in doing because it's been a long time since I ranged. And even when I ranged, like improvising and just going mad was kind of the thing that I enjoyed doing it. Like the way that I enjoy doing it, not necessarily being very structured and strategical in ranged abilities. You could probably remember some of this from my range guide from back then. A lot of that still applies, but some of it changed obviously because you don't have the dynamic adrenaline factor the same way as you did with Hydrix bolts. But what I have is I have my regular Cerenic. There's nothing special about it. Just the old perks that I had on it. I haven't done anything new to cater to new niches or new things. So this still works. I'm using the Bolg with perks that I just butchered off of my Eldritch Crossbow. I haven't bothered replacing them with the extra Equilibrium tier because I didn't really care about it. I have two Pernix Quivers. One of them has Death Spore arrows. That's not that one. That's the one. Death Spore arrows and Hydrix backs. I'm not really using the bolts here. They're just in there to fill the slots, and I don't want to use the toggle thing, so I just bought two Pernix Quivers instead. The other one has the Bic arrows, which I'm using for most of this. They also have Onyx per criminal bolts. Again, not using them. And then separately, I have full arrows that I use for whenever my stacks either are maxed out at 400 or I'm going for a target that I won't be attacking for long enough for the poison stacks from the big arrows to matter, which is in this case the core and the elf and then the end of P4. I'm working on trying to figure out how to use the full arrows during the arms and legs as well, and maybe even during the roots, but the roots don't really need it because their HP is so low that you mostly just like one bang them with one ability if you choose your ability carefully. But I want to utilize these wherever I can, where I could like benefit from the damage bonus from them and the underlying poison stacks from the big arrows at the same time. So that would be like whenever I reach 400 stacks, so pretty much P3 and P4. My EOFs are the normal range ones. This purple one is Seren Godbow, the black one is Eldritch Crossbow, and the green one is Dark Bow. The colors don't correlate with what's recommended in PVME just for the sake of their guide consistency. This is just me picking colors that I like, so don't read into that. It doesn't make a difference. I have two dummies, my Excalibur. I don't have a bladed dive switch because I upgraded the dive ability recently, so I could do that with whatever, which is kind of nice. And then just for my rest switch and for like panic shit, I have a main hand Blightbound Crossbow and the Vengeful Kite Shield. Ever since we got the Greater Death Swiftness and Greater Sunshine abilities, then I've been replacing all my defenders that I typically had for Planted Feet switches and a rest switch combined into one with just the tier 90 shields, because now I can just use one inventory slot to get a massive rest instead, get the full tier 90 potential of it, so you can rest like 5k here, which is nice. Everything else is pretty standard. I was using the incense things, obviously, because poison is your main damage thing here. So I was using incense, I was using powder of penance and powder of item protection, and then I used a blood reaver familiar, which I also filled with scrolls so that I could use that as a unicorn, and whenever I spec, I just heal slightly from it. Because you're using the blood reaver, what you want to do is you want to maximize the amount of times that you hit Solak here, so you're using vampirism aura, because that deals a little bit of your healing as damage to the target, which in then turn can produce a separate poison hit. So if you like the number of hits on the target from any source really is the thing that makes this potent. And typically you see people do this with a Wen book instead of a Grimoire. I like the Grim because I want a crit buff for the Incend builds and for my Death Spore stacks to be a little bit more reliable. Wen book technically does more with the poison because it hits several times and each one of those times can proc a poison hit. So this, I don't know, some people like that one more. I prefer the Grim by a mile. I've been doing this with different setups now for a little bit. But yeah, onwards to the actual kill. This should be good. I'm just going to play and pause this as I go along and then comment on what's happening. So first thing I'm doing here is I have a dummy down pre-spawn where I'm just building up 5 Death Spore stacks, because the first thing I want to do when I start this fight is a free incendiary shot followed by a Death Swiftness. So start, Incend, DS, and then I use my Adrem Pot, a Greeko, and the first thing I do is a Seren Godbow. After that I do a bow spec. The reason I do this is because I want the Godbow to be available at the end of the DS. This was lucky, so I just ended up catching that green Blight Bomb rather than just tanking it, but you can do either, it doesn't really matter. So whatever excess Adren I have, I'm dumping into Dark Bows and then cycling Threshes, sort of improvising, doing everything with the big arrows, because what I want to do now is just build stacks. At the end of the DS, I'm doing another Godbow, and then I'm finishing off with another bow spec because I want the bow spec to be helping me with just kind of suppressing fire during the roots. So during the roots I just do 2 or 3 of them and then I turn around and I tag Solak with a big arrow with 1 ability just to make sure I don't lose the stacks. The 30-second time window there is a lot more generous than I treat it as, but I want to be careful, so here I just turn around with a dead shot, which is a little bit overpowered, but there's no reason not to. You want to bring him down to 1.5 anyway. So. As soon as I'm done with the roots, go back onto Solak and just finish whatever HP he has left. I try to face onto either 130, 140 or 150 with 100% Adren so that I can begin the arms with 100%. The first thing I want to do with the arms is stuff that requires a bit of Adren. So here I just ECB spec, then I bow spec on the arm to get that damage done. Do a Greeko, and then kind of improvise. Here I turn around, I put my Death Spore arrows on because I want to do a free Incend soon, so I'm just Death Sporing this arm until I have 5 stacks. At which point I turn around, I throw the Incend on Solak's head rather than the arm because I don't want to kill the arm before it blows up. Then I do a DS. I tag Solak with 1 ability of big arrows on his head, then I go for the legs. Kind of improvising the legs, but here I did an ECB spec and then I think I finished with a bow spec. Now for the core I want to ECB and then kind of just dump whatever does a lot of damage, and here I'm using the full arrows because the big arrow poison effect doesn't matter for this short burst, so I'd much rather have the damage addition from the full arrows. Turning around, making sure to tag Solak again with a big arrow so I don't lose my stacks. This is a pretty common place to lose the stacks. Just debowing the first eruption, getting my cleanse off, then going up on the first eruption, start killing the storm. I could have probably have gotten away with doing just one of these and saved another 10 or 15 seconds or so, but I'm not super confident with ECBing during P2 because it rinses my soul split healing, so I chose to go up twice whenever I'm ranging so far. Yeah, kill that thing, finish the 3rd erupt, and then put my Death Spore arrows on the 4th erupt. This way I start P2 with 5 Death Spore stacks, hopefully, or close to anyway. Turn around, I Incend Solak, start P2 with the DS and another Adrem Pot, and I repeat the same thing pretty much, starting with a Godbow, followed by an ECB spec, just dumping off as much as I can damage-wise here. This is also when I use my Camelot thing, whatever it's called, my Excalibur healing, because of the ECB rinsing my healing from Soul Split. So yeah, this DS is pretty much the same as the other ones, just start and finish with a God Bow and dump any excess adren into Dark Bows and heavy attacks like Thresholds and sometimes the Bow Spec. I'm still working on figuring out when exactly to Bow Spec, because I want to be like upkeeping it a lot, but I also want to place it in a way that I get the most damage possible out of the actual spec hit, because the hit that the Bow Spec produces is pretty good, I think. But yeah, I'm finishing P2 here. I didn't skip the rain entirely, but I think I skipped some of the hits, which was pretty decent. Here I ended up with an extremely lucky shot. This was just ridiculous. Notice here I have 2 Death Spore stacks. The corruption is at 1%, so he's gonna face... No, sorry, 2 seconds of Death Spore left, not stacks. I ended up getting the stacks prior to entering P3 because I thought I was gonna enter quicker. Then I shoot the incendiary shot onto Solak. In the global cooldown, the incendiary requires to explode and actually start giving you its effect, the crit buff effect. During that GCD, I ended up facing Solak onto P3, and what happened was the incend was delayed, carried over to P3, there. So now it's actually on him, you can see the icon here, and then it explodes first thing P3. Now, I did not intend to do that, that is just annoyingly perfect, and I can't reproduce that every time, there's no fucking way, but it ended up being extremely beneficial, this one kill, and it was pretty cool to get it in the video. So P3 begins, and I just DS with the explosion of that incend, and during this DS, I'm using the full arrows, because now I'm at 400% poison effect, so there's no reason for me to carry on camping the Bix, they're giving me nothing, they're just blunt arrows at this point. Now, you can see here that I've missed my Vuln. I forgot to throw a Vuln bomb onto Solak, which is quite annoying, because this is a really like heavy damage portion here. But yeah, I'm carrying on with the full arrows for a while, and then I throw the Bix back on, just to make sure that I keep the stacks up. Do as much as I can to Solak. Finish with the God Bow in the place where my DS is, and after that God Bow it's time to move over to the second pad. I was a little bit behind on damage here. Moving on to the second pad and trying to finish this pad with 100% adren so I can go straight in for the elf. The only thing that really matters here is that you make sure that he has like a fresh poison stack applied before you go into the elf, because there's a time window over between this and P4 where you could otherwise lose it. And I go into the elf, put the full arrows on, I ECB spec, bow spec, Greco, then rapid fire. Kind of improvise for the rest of the elf and finish with another Greco at the end. Come out, put my Bix back on. Now I want to just tag Solak as soon as he becomes attackable, so I upkeep the poison. I do a DS, no incendiary here, I ditched doing the Death Spore build-ups for P4 because it was just too complicated. I started choking, or I like lost the poison stacks, which ended up not being worth it, or I didn't get enough crits to get the 5 stacks in time, so I just fell behind, whatever, so I just ditched the incend for P4 altogether. And then I pretty much just do the biggest burst of damage I can with the full arrows and ECB spec and the bow spec running, and then finish off with a God Bow. And that was it. So that was 655, which is decent considering I've only been doing this for like a couple hours total. But I think if everything goes the way I want it to be and the way I think it could go, if I shaped up my ability rotation a little bit better especially during P3, because P3 was like half wank this time, I could probably bring this down to maybe 630 or something, I don't know. I don't think I'll be able to get the root skip with range, because there's just, when you haven't built up enough to have that underlying poison damage. Like, you haven't had time to get enough stacks on Solak. This just, I don't know, maybe there is a way, I have no idea. Just, it doesn't seem conceivable for me to do root skips, especially not consistently. But given the fact that you can still bring this down to under 7 minutes just by style camping, and the fact that you have a 1.6 million death rather than 20, which is the hybrid death, I think this is a quite viable method. It's also an intense amount of fun. Yeah, I think that was everything I had to say about this. Thank you for watching.